Shalom, shalom. Good morning to you. This is Bill, and we're here for the meditations on the Torah. I am hoping today that we will be able to get through a session without having any kind of interruptions by virtue of the technology failures or internet failures or my failures. I thank you that you're tuning in and listening. We are at a very important part of the Torah. I may say that every week because there is no unimportant part of the Torah, obviously, or unimportant part of the King's plan for our lives, which is what the Torah consists of. We are at Parsha Emor, the 31st of the Parshot of the Torah cycle. Annually, we go through this each year to take us deeper and deeper, higher on the mountain, deeper into the depths of the wisdom of our King and his plan for our lives, for our families, for our nations, for the physical world in which we live, and for all of his creation. Plans of redemption, plans of restoration, plans of healing, plans for hope, for life, and for joy, and for purpose. And that is what we're engaged in. And here we are in the 31st of the Parsha. We are finishing up today with something very dear to the heart of every Hebrew. We are finishing up the Kedusha discourse. This is the central theme, the central statements of the Creator of the universe in all of Torah. For on that matter, it is the longest, continuous running, uninterrupted section of divine speech in the entire Bible, all the written works that we have left for us. This is the greatest, longest running period of divine speech that is not interrupted by a narrative. However, we're going to come to the end of that discourse today, and we're going to have to take a look at what has been said to us, what we're supposed to have gotten, and the Holy One is going to help us. He gives us these aids by virtue of the bookend narratives. The Kedusha discourse began in chapter 10 of Leviticus. It was the beginning, that the narrative that set it off, that caused it to be awakened in us. To start off was the Nadab and Abihu incident of the strange fire, the presentation of fire, though everyone else in the community was bowing or falling on their faces and singing the sounds of worship that fell straight from heaven, so as it were receiving from heaven the blessings of the Creator of the universe, that the angels sing, the cherubim and the seraphim sing, and releasing those upon the earth. Instead, Nadab and Abihu got up, and they went and they took their censers in their hand, as they had seen the Egyptian magicians do, apparently. It was a foreign thing, not a thing that was part of the instructions of the Holy One. And while everyone else was in this mode of humility, gratitude, thanksgiving, and worship, they stepped on their own into the fire, the falling fire of heaven, and they got too close to the flames, and they were consumed. Now, that narrative was shocking, and it initiated this whole Kedusha discourse, because the Holy One said at that time, by those who approach me, I must be considered, it must be kadoshed. I must be brought into this level of holiness, and holiness must touch holiness. And so anything less than holiness that touches holiness will become as Nadab and Abihu. That was the reason for the Kedusha discourse that began in chapter 10. Now, interestingly, at that time, the Kedusha discourse was initiated by the Creator of the universe with Aharon, the father of the two young men who had just perished by virtue of what had happened. Aharon. Now, at the conclusion, we're now chapters down the road. We've had multiple parshas. We've had chapter after chapter of download of revelation. And I'm getting warnings that my internet connection is weak, so I'm praying we'll get as much in as we can before the internet cuts us off. But blessings to you, and Shabbat Shalom to everyone. Now let's go forward. So at the end of the Parsha, at the end of the discussion, we have this very interesting thing. This is the last Parsha of the Kedusha discourse, Emor is. And Emor begins with the idea that the Holy One speaks to Moshe, and he says, you speak to Aaron and his sons. Now, this whole discourse began with direct communication between the Holy One and Aharon, which then expanded to everyone else. But now he's going back and saying, Moshe, you tell Aharon these things, so to speak, for me. Now, it takes this whole idea of speaking. Emor is the name of the Parsha. It's the first significant word of the Parsha. What he said, speak, Moshe, speak to Aharon. We get that word speak, but Emor means much more than that. Emor is one of the multiple words in Hebrew that can be used to express verbalization. And we have, dabar is to hum, to send out a vibration that stirs internally. That's the dabar. It's also translated thing because it's substantive. It's not about the words themselves. The dabar is not. The dabar is about what it does, the power within the sound of the humming, the sound of the Holy One's voice, or the broadcast that he's making. Then we have kara, which is to call out, to try to get someone's attention, to declare something out loud that is specifically chosen for that purpose. We have hagad, which is to teach or to speak or to tell a story. It's usually storytelling. And that's what the Holy One actually begins the whole Nadab and Abihu narrative as the first bookend. And he's going to choose another narrative to close out, to tell the story at the end of the discourse. It will be the narrative of Ben Ish Mitzri, the son of the Egyptian. We're going to hear the blasphemer, or various different things you may hear it called. But this narrative will offset, will counteract, will be the other side of the story of the Nadab and Abihu narrative that began. These two narratives, these two bookends, sandwich this great revelation stream of the Kedusha discourse. And they help us to interpret it, help us to make sense of it, to apply it to our lives. Because if we don't understand the narratives at the beginning, we'll take words out of context, we'll focus more upon the actual words spoken than we will upon the dabar, the substance, and the hum, and the power that's in it. So the narratives are given to us as bookends to teach us what these things mean in our lives, how we're not to become and act as Nadab and Abihu did. And there are certain secrets to that are found within the discourse, and how we are not to behave like the Ben Ish Mitzri, the son of the Egyptian, the quote blasphemer that we read about at the end. We're to put ourselves between these two and follow a course, a runway, as it were, between these two extremes of human behavior that bring a diminishing, a curse, a halal, into the realm of the holy. We can't be holy and not react and behave holy. We can't be holy. We can't be holy as He is holy, as we're called to do. And bring in the negativity of either our own flesh and pseudo-intellect or of the world in general. So I'm hoping